I think something that's lacking now in our world is, people are really sensitive to any criticism about their work. And I, got straight up told on a number of times, like, don't even send us this. Like, it's not where it needs to be. And it didn't bother me either. It actually like woke me up to, okay, this is the standard. This is how they do things here. If I cannot deliver on that level, then it's not going to work. You almost have to remove yourself from your own biases, right? About what you're putting out there. And it's not good enough to just land the job and be here. It's like, what are you going to do once you get the opportunity? How are you going to advance yourself? And if you can't use constructive criticism as a motivation to do better, then maybe you should consider doing something else, because we're creating images and video content that is being dispersed to sometimes thousands and millions of people. So the people who are in charge of publishing that take it very seriously. The standard is the standard, right?
Yeah.
It's like, and there should be a very clear standard for what we do in these professions.
Okay, episode number 12 of the Sports Creative Showcase is out now. We are here with Troy Anderson. After back-to-back weeks of two soccer creatives, we're going back to the roots and we're going to hockey here. Troy is an incredibly talented videographer and photographer based out of Detroit. Met you 2 seasons ago while working the Stanley Cup Final, and I know you and I have been talking about doing this for a while, so I'm glad I finally get to have you on the show. He's an incredibly talented NFL LCC and NHL LSC, and arguably one of the most hardworking and talented creatives I've ever personally gotten to work with. And like I said, very excited to have you on the podcast today. This is a long time coming. What's going on, man?
Hey, man. Well, thank you for the awesome intro. Glad we're finally able to do this. I'm sitting in my apartment across the street from Little Caesars Arena in downtown Detroit, getting ready to later this afternoon head over there and capture an original 6 matchup between the Blackhawks and the Wings tonight. So looking forward to that. Looking forward to this conversation.
little Connor Bedard action there. You get to see the generational wonder. Are you excited for that?
That's right. Yeah, his only time in Detroit this year. That rivalry.
Oh, they only play one time in Detroit, eh?
Yeah. That rivalry's been kind of dampered since since they switched divisions a few years ago. So I'm excited at the one shot to capture some content from him.
That's lucky, man. I don't know if I'll get the chance to shoot him this year, but he seems like a lot of fun to shoot. Anyways, now, like I said before, you and I have been planning this for a while. In fact, I'm pretty sure we've had this conversation about shooting this podcast episode since we shot the Stanley Cup Finals back almost a year ago, a little bit over a year ago, but we've always obviously been so busy. You're obviously about to go to work in a few hours. So I'm glad to finally get this time to sit down and chat. Before we get into the Stanley Cup Final and your work with the NFL and the NHL, I want you to give me a little lowdown and give the audience a little lowdown on how you got started in this line of work. Working in sports, and the whole point of the podcast and what I do with YouTube and everything is to teach people how to get into this space, because obviously it's a really desired one with content creation becoming way more of a valid career path. This is something a lot of people want to get into. So as someone who works for 2 of the biggest sports leagues in North America, I would, love to hear how you got started. You're kind of, like I say in every episode, your origin story as a creator.
Yeah. So it kind of, you can sort of take it all the way back to high school for me, and don't worry, I won't go too in depth on all of it. But my first sort of experience in working with a camera was when I was 16 years old. I got a job with this camera company called VIO. And at the time they were a competitor to GoPro. This is like 2006-ish. So this is right when the point of view cameras were sort of getting on the scene, on the market. And one of my first jobs was testing these cameras before shipping them out, just kind of playing with them, making sure they worked, getting broken cameras back, sort of messing around with cameras and seeing what cool stuff you could really create with them. And so that combined with a family member of mine went to film school, had a film in Sundance. When I was in high school, I thought that was a really cool career path, and just it didn't seem like something that I had really considered. And then I sort of forgot about it for a while, and then went to college, and I played hockey growing up. So I always loved the sport. And when I went to school at Michigan State University, and while I was at Michigan State, the Red Wings were playing against the Maple Leafs in the outdoor game.
In the big house.
Yes, at the big house. And they had the behind the scenes Road to the Winter Classic show that was produced. And I was just graduating from college at the time. I didn't even go to school for video production or media studies. I actually went to school for urban planning, believe it or not.
No way.
And during this time, I knew I wanted to move to Detroit. It was close to East Lansing. And I just knew that I wanted to be there, partially because I loved Detroit sports. And so anyway, fast forwarding to this episode that I was watching on the Road to the Winter Classic. In one of those episodes, the Red Wings donated a Zamboni to this outdoor ice rink in Southwest Detroit. And I said, whoa, that place looks really cool. Full regulation outdoor ice rink. And they have a youth hockey program. The bridge to Canada is in the background, lit up at night. It's a beautiful spot. And I'm from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, where I grew up playing hockey outdoors all the time. So when I moved to Detroit, I went over to Clark Park is the name of where the ice rink is at, and knocked on the door, asked if they needed a hockey coach. And this guy opened the door, said, yeah, come on in. And there's a room full of kids and their parents, and said, hey, everybody, this is Coach Troy.
No way.
And I was like, whoa, okay. So I was a volunteer.
You just got thrown in the fire.
Yes, exactly. And it was cool because it's an inner city ice rink, not your typical hockey demographic. Southwest Detroit is also called Mexican Town. And so there's just not your typical hockey demographic there. And it was kind of a Mighty Ducks situation, really. These kids only have access to the game at this park where they can skate outside for 2-3 months a year if they're lucky. And so being in that environment was awesome. And simultaneously, while I was doing this, I got a job at a nonprofit organization, right, that goes right along with my degree. But I told them I wanted to work on the communication side of it. And I wanted to document, work going on in Detroit neighborhoods to make, that organizations are doing to make the city better. And so I, got some cameras and was doing that work. And then, as I said, simultaneously working with this outdoor ice rink, I got the idea to make a film about this ice rink. So over the course of 3 years, my friend and I documented this outdoor hockey team that I helped coach. And it was a passion project. It was a time in my life where I could spend hours every winter at this ice rink with these kids. And what resulted was a 25-minute short documentary called Clark Park that was put out in 2017, I believe. And it got into, honestly, much to my surprise, it got into about 15 film festivals.
No way. That's awesome.
And one of them was the Detroit Free Press Film Festival, a lot of Midwestern film festivals, and Michigan film festivals. And it was even in one in Windsor as well. And really, due to that decision to invest my time in something that I love doing, it naturally evolved into me getting an opportunity with the Red Wings. So someone with the Red Wings saw the film, and there was also a full-time videographer position open up at the same time. So I applied for that, but I had zero professional sports experience. I didn't even have a degree that was in that world.
Yeah.
And so, one of the things that I often hear people have troubles with in getting into professional sports is, how do you have a background in professional sports to get that door open? And So what happened was they offered me a job for the minor league team in Grand Rapids, and I turned that down because I wanted to be in Detroit. But luckily, that was one of the first years that the NHL had this LSC program, so they referred me to that position. And I believe 2018 was my first season in the position, and so that door was opened, and I never looked back. It's an absolute dream job. It was nothing that I planned on doing or necessarily had the goal of doing. It was something that I thought would be unbelievably awesome.
And it kind of fell into your lap because of the stuff you did externally. Like something
Exactly.
I like to say is like when people ask me like you said, like this is how do you get into this, especially you don't have a background in it. It's like you just got to work locally, like find stuff in your community, and that's kind of exactly what you did from getting that coaching opportunity thrown on you, and then then you ended up picking up a camera through that. It just shows that you don't have to go to school for this. You went for what was it, urban planning? Like
Yeah.
some people, even I went to school for a sports media degree, but nothing of what I learned is actually what I use out in the field. So it's for a lot of people listening, it is really important to know, like, if you don't need to have a school background in this, you just need to go out there and put yourself out there. You've been with the program now since 2018. How have you grown and evolved as a creator in the last, feels like, less than 3 years, but that's over 4 or 5 years now. How have you grown and evolved as a creator, shooting professional hockey at that level?
I mean, it's been night and day, honestly. And I think the biggest influence that I had was a guy named Dan Manis, who was the head videographer, content creator, kind of before that was even a term, right? For the Red Wings, he was with them for 10 years, and he's in another industry now, but. He really set the standard for me. First of all, he's the one who gave me the opportunity. He's the one who kind of saw that I was passionate about hockey, passionate about creating images and documenting, the history of the sport, and delivering that through a medium of social media and other short, short films and things of that nature. So. He was the person that opened the door for me, and he also set the standard of quality. And I think something that's lacking now in our world is, people are really sensitive to any criticism about their work. And I, got straight up told on a number of times, like, don't even send us this. Like, it's not where it needs to be. And it didn't bother me either. It actually like woke me up to, okay, this is the standard. This is how they do things here. And if I cannot deliver on that level, then it's not going to work.
Yeah.
And so setting the standard of quality for photography, for videography, for editing was something that I really, really needed. Because I was just happy to be there, right? I was so stoked to have a camera in my hand and be in the arena of my childhood team, and was kind of wide-eyed. And very, very quickly, I sort of got a crash course in, this is a job, this is a profession, this is
you're still at work.
Yeah,
You're still it's your career. This isn't, you're not just
Exactly.
there for fun. Like, there is a level of professionalism, and like you said, there's like a level of quality you need to have at this level. And I really like, sorry to cut you off, I just really like the fact that you brought up the idea of like people not being able to take criticism. And I think that's unfortunately true, especially in the age of social media. But I do think it's such a vital thing for growth in this industry, and something I haven't really gotten to talk about. But like, I think a lot of people portray the sports industry as this really glamorous place where you can do anything you want. And that's not true. And you kind of said it there, like, sometimes you're going to get shit on for your work. And it's not a good feeling, but it's definitely something you can learn from. Do you have any advice for people out there who aren't used to taking criticism in terms of like, getting told like you're a piece you're really proud of and someone's like, it could be better? What advice would you give to people who could probably, learn how to take a little bit more criticism, constructive criticism? I'm not saying
Right.
like, if someone
Right.
if someone shits on your work because they just want to do it on Twitter or Instagram, that's different. But like constructively, like in order to improve, how do you take that and internalize it without taking it personally?
I think that's a tough question because it all has to do with the individual's personality and outlook on the situation, right? So you almost have to remove yourself from your own biases, right? About what you're putting out there. And for me at that time, I used it as motivation, and I had a level and an individual that I looked at as both a mentor, but also a benchmark, saying I want to get to this level, right? It's not good enough to just land the job and be here. It's like, what are you going to do once you get the opportunity? How are you going to advance yourself? And if you can't use constructive criticism as a motivation to do better, then maybe you should consider doing something else, because we're creating images and video content that is being dispersed to sometimes thousands and millions of people. So the people who are in charge of publishing that take it very seriously and should take it seriously, because what you're creating is representative of the brand, the team, the league, the player, and so understanding that it's almost, I know it's like a football quote from somewhere. It's like the standard is the standard, right?
Yeah.
It's like, and there should be a very clear standard for what we do in these professions. And I'm really happy to say that I think that standard has gone up exponentially in the last couple of years, in particular, and what I'm seeing not only in the NHL, but just for sports creative in general.
Yeah, no, those are all really, really good points. And I think that is the standard is something that definitely gets lost in the mix, especially with social media nowadays. People want to get stuff out quick. People want to get stuff that gets clicks. And I feel like in translation, like taking more time on a project, a video, a photo, whatever it is, like it kind of gets lost in the mix and we lose that quality. But I really love that take. You also happen to work for the NFL, not just the NHL. You're also an LCC for the Lions. Mm-hmm. You get to work for two Detroit teams as a Michigan kid, must be a really special feeling. What was it like when you got to step into, your first Red Wings game or your first Lions game? What is that feeling like, being a guy growing up watching these franchises and now you get to cover them for, your job?
Doing that's a great question, first of all, and doing it now for 6 years for the NHL and 5 for the NFL. I'm finding that I need to remind myself how awesome these opportunities are. And so I'm trying to be more mindful. Last weekend, I just got done with an exhausting back-to-back of a Red Wings game on American Thanksgiving Eve, and then the Lions game on American Thanksgiving. And so I'm done at about midnight at Little Caesars Arena, and then I'm at Ford Field at 7:30 in the morning. And have to deal with the, all the things that we have to do as far as media management and whatnot in between that. But the first time I got, walked into, it was Little Caesars Arena and got to do it, I still actually kept the paper credential that I got, because I was the biggest Red Wings fan growing up. I grew up in the heyday of the Stanley Cup championships in 97, 98, 02, and 08. And I was a kid who literally begged my mom to let me stay up late and sleep on the couch to watch hockey. And so it was such an important thing in my life, that being able to get the opportunity to work for the NHL was something that I honestly took a little while for me to even wrap my head around how much it means, to me, to be able to have this job. And that's also That's also why I take so much pride in setting a standard for the quality of the work that I put out. And then as it relates to the NFL, I didn't even have the goal of working for the NFL. And what I say about Detroit, and I think it's true about the sports creative community in general, is that it's a small, small world.
Yep.
And once my first year of working for the NHL, my friend Zach Silver, who's an incredible photographer here in Detroit, he covers Detroit sports as well. He was and still is an LLC for the LCC for the NFL, and they could, believe it or not, they couldn't find people when these programs first started.
Right? I mean, like, when you think about it, like 5-6 years ago, our people who do what we do were very far and in between, and I think also like the era of content creation, if we want to call it that, didn't really kick in until just before COVID, and COVID kicked it into overdrive because people just figured out, I'm gonna buy a camera and start making content, and then people came out of COVID and realized you could do it in sports. So when you think about it, what we're doing is very like revolutionary in terms of what happens in the sports world. Like our positions, our job did not exist 5, 6, 7 years ago, relative to how popular and everyone wants to get into it now in 2023.
Right. And so having that reference for that job I got asked if I wanted to work for the NFL very casually. And I was like, what? Absolutely.
Having a beer and you're just like, hey, how do you want to shoot the Lions tomorrow? And what the hell?
And then I'm on the phone with our program manager, and then I'm on the sidelines of Ford Field the next fall. So
give us the lowdown of how you got into the NFL, because we just heard your hockey story. You were shooting with the Wings for a while there, and then how did the NFL knock on your door?
Yeah, so this other photographer who works for the Red Wings directly as a part-time shooter had the LCC position with the NFL. They were looking for more talent, more people. They only had one position at the time. There's now like 4 positions per team, and they were looking to get into video. And so my friend Zach said, "Hey, do you want to, just very casually while we were at a Red Wings game, do you want to work for the NFL? They're looking for people to fill this position. I think you'd be great at it, and I can refer you to the job if you want." And I said, "Yeah, absolutely." And that has been a really fun journey as well, because I'm being from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. I'm actually only like 3 hours away from Green Bay. And I've got the opportunity to shoot about 7 Packers games over the last few years. I shot a Packers game during COVID with no fans in the stands during a snowstorm. That was wild. So I've got to see Tom Brady, and Aaron Rodgers in the NFC Championship game of 2020, and with 9,000 fans in there. So I've been extremely lucky to experience a lot of incredible atmospheres over the last handful of years in a position that I never even had the goal to get into.
When it comes to shooting multiple sports, you're kind of like a multi-sport athlete, just not the, multi-sport creative.
Right.
As someone who personally, I've shot football and translated to hockey afterwards and vice versa. What you grew up watching hockey. That was what you wanted to do. You ended up getting the job. You go to the NFL, completely different sport, completely different pace of play, completely different access to a hockey game. What are some of the biggest differences for you that you had to adjust to when it came from going from hockey to football? And is there one you like shooting more in particular? I feel like I know the answer. Yeah. But what's the biggest thing you change in your routine and your creative style when you go from football to hockey, or vice versa?
Yeah. So I think really part of the answer to that question is understanding that it's the same platform that all this content is going out on, right? It's social, it's Twitter, it's Instagram, it's TikTok. And the biggest adjustment for me for shooting football is that one of another shooter in town works for the NFL Films. He's based out of Detroit, and that is like cinematography at its height, right? That is,
everyone wants to do NFL films,
and it's hard. Those guys and girls work incredibly hard at that. And so for me, my going into shooting for the NFL, I wanted to sort of approach it like I was a cinematographer, right? And
I
I
love
learned,
that. I love the fact that you said that.
and I learned it. I learned really quickly though that that's not always necessarily the best way to approach the job that we have, because it's hard to do. You have to have a lot of reps. You know, there's always that shot of following the football in the air, right? To from the pass to the reception, and understanding that sometimes that takes a lot of reps, a lot of seasons for people to get that shot down. And I was trying stuff like that and maybe not executing on it right away, and then missing the shot entirely. So it's adjusting a little bit to, okay, maybe this is a full pan focus rack shot instead of trying to track the ball through the air. And after, half a season or a season, then it's determining, okay, maybe I can try that now, that I've gotten some reps under me in this. And so much of it has to do with setup as well. Are you shooting on a shoulder mount? Are you shooting on a hi-hat? And understanding, now we have multiple videographers who are shooting these NFL games, and you have to work as truly part of a team to make sure that you're covering every angle and actually understanding that, half the time you're not going to get the shot, but you have to be there and you have to work with that other person to make sure you have each side of the end zone covered, or you have the reverse end zone covered in case there's a pick six. And so it's like making these judgments. And I think the biggest difference between hockey and football is hockey is like so much faster.
Yeah.
And I personally think it's a little bit harder to shoot from the ice level, because tracking is, in my mind, a lot easier in football to track a good shot. And it's still, can be tricky with some misdirection plays and what have you. But I'd say the environments are extremely different as well, right? You have a little bit more room to move on an NFL sideline. You have a little bit more, you can make split second decisions, or maybe I want to set up on the goal line for this shot, or maybe I want to go by the goal post in the middle. And so really, also something that I tell, people in this world is, of sports content creation is like, it actually helps a heck of a lot to watch games and understand tendencies of teams and where they might be going, how they're in the NHL, how, maybe it's how their power plays are set up, or like just understanding
the game as a whole.
Exactly. Understanding the game and trying to anticipate what's going to happen is going to put you in a way better position than just trying to set up a shot and focus on the quarterback and react from there. Understanding the situational awareness of, this is most likely going to be a run play or a pass play. So all of that sort of stuff goes into it, and that's something I've tried to develop over 5 years in doing this, and it's been an incredible opportunity, and I've worked with a lot of great people here that make it fun. Showing up at 7-8 a.m. on a Sunday.
You brought up so many interesting things that we could talk about all day. The whole idea of wanting to make it like cinematography, but understand that you don't have to. It's really interesting because for me, I try to take a cinematography approach versus just being a videographer. But you're totally right when you say sometimes you gotta think about where this is going versus doing the cinematography, for lack of a better explanation, for your own ego and for your own creative mindset. Because at the end of the day, you're still working for a client. You're still working for someone, and you're delivering for a certain platform. And I really like that take. One other thing you mentioned was, a lot of it depends on what kind of gear setup you have. Can you talk us a little through what gear you use to capture both football and hockey at the highest level?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a Sony A7S III. That's my go-to capture for video. Use that for both sports.
Love that camera.
It's incredible. It's one of the best investments that I've ever made. I've had it for essentially since it was released. I can't
Same
even
here.
remember
I just looked. I got mine like almost 3 years ago to the day when I got a new camera. It's like it still kicks. It's still one of the best bang for your buck bodies for video out there.
Absolutely, and so and my other I invested about a year ago in a Sony A1. Mainly for shooting hockey, but I have a whole lot of other uses for it outside of the sports world, and my production business. But also just having two cameras, I've found is so vital for both sports. I have found myself in situations where I'm hand holding or shoulder mounting my A7S III at a hockey game, and then the celebration comes right at me, and it's two, and they're literally on the other side of the glass from me, and I can't get anything. So then I have my A1 with a wide lens on, and I can snap a couple wide pictures of it. So just trying to set yourself up for anything, and even if I've learned you can have all these shot lists from all these teams, and from the league as well. But if you capture something that is good, they will share it.
Yeah. 100%.
And just putting yourself in the position, whether that's a video or photo, using your judgment to have the ability to capture a moment that isn't necessarily what you had planned on capturing, has been something that I try to keep at top of mind.
No, the two camera setup and having that flexibility is such a vital thing. And as someone myself, I also have an A7S III. Love that camera. I've shot pretty much everything over the last 3 or 4 years since it's been released on that. And I just got my own second camera. I borrowed a friend's A7 III for the longest time, and now I have my A7C Mark II. And just having a second camera on you, like I was shooting the Hall of Fame game a few weekends ago up here in Toronto, and just having that second body you can bring up with a wider lens compared to like what you'd have on your other camera, it's such a game changer. And I think people don't realize, like, investing in that, like, cameras are expensive, lenses are expensive, but investing in it eventually makes you not just a better creator, but a more efficient one. When you're shooting hockey, let's go with this really quickly. What lenses are you using? Because obviously you said you have your A1 with a wider lens. Are you having a 24-70, or do you have like a 70-200 on the A7S III when you're rocking out?
I switch back and forth between both those two lenses exactly. I have my workhorse lens is still the same lens that I shot the finals with 2 years ago, which is the Sigma 24-70 art lens. Actually, it's half the price of the Sony lens, and at the time that I purchased it, it was the most financially viable one for me, and I've actually absolutely loved its performance, especially with focus tracking is exceptional on it. The images that come out of it are great. And then I have a Sony 70-200 G Master lens. So this year in particular, I've been going back and forth between shooting elevated shots and cropping them in for vertical platforms like Reels and TikTok. I've for so long, for the last 2 years, I've used my 24-70 and shot at ice level. And something that I tell people that specifically have my job and our job with the NHL in shooting hockey is that you're going to miss stuff. It's like
you can't get them all.
There's going to be a ref in front of you. There's going to be an obstruction
or something.
A fan's I've had fans spill beer on me before. Like, something's going to happen and you're not going to get the shot. So I find it's sort of a risk reward thing between trying to capture that incredible ice level shot versus shooting elevated, where you can cover the entire game, and it just opens you up to a completely different perspective. And some of the highest performing content that I've shot this year has actually been elevated shots. Specifically, there's a shot of Jake Wallman doing a dance the other night after he scored a goal that was shot at an elevated position that I just wouldn't have had that that angle or vantage point had I been on the ice level. I'm not even sure if I would have captured the, the 3-second celebration of that. So I try to never do the same thing every game. I try to switch up if I'm shooting from ice level or even on a period basis. Sometimes I'll shoot ice level from one period. Sometimes I'll hop up in the second period and shoot elevated. So I try to it sort of keeps me on my toes from a creative standpoint. And especially with all these videos coming out now of like the bird's eye view shots.
I was just about to bring that up.
Like I want
the
to try
elevator
that tonight.
Yeah, no, I think I love the idea of having the different perspectives and widening your coverage. I feel like so many people get tunnel vision. Like, I need to be on the glass. I need to have a hole. I need to, like, that's the only way I can create content. Like, that's not entirely true. And I think what separates, good content creators and videographers and cinematographers from great ones is the ability to adapt to the situations you're given and understanding, like, no matter where you're put in an arena, whether it's glass, whether it's in the 200s or even higher than that, you can still get incredible content. So I'm glad you brought that up. What's something you do apart from, your coverage and moving around to make sure that you're adapting to different situations? Because like you mentioned, like sometimes fans are going to get in the way. Sometimes it's a ref. So you mentioned you move around from period to period. Is there anything else you do to kind of keep changing up your content as you capture it?
One of the things that honestly I think got me the opportunity to shoot the finals a couple of years ago is that I edit on the fly. And so maybe that's not necessarily, something that I do to adapt to a situation, but what I've come to understand in this world of sports content creation, specifically for live content, is that the more you can do to set up the publisher to just press publish, the more likely it is to get used. So I have become pretty proficient at creating presets in Lightroom, creating presets in Adobe Rush on my phone, or I'll occasionally go to my laptop to edit things for speed ramps and stuff like that in between periods. But I am editing sometimes, seconds after I capture the content and crop it for multiple platforms and send multiple multiple looks and that's worked extremely well for me. That's something that I started doing because I recognized, okay, if I send this photo with just straight out of the camera with no edit on it, maybe they're not going to take the time to put a preset, crop it correctly. And that's changed a little bit in the last year or so, I'd say, specifically from the NHL standpoint in particular, but that's something that's been part of my routine that has resulted in a lot more of my work being shared.
No, that's awesome. I think there's a lot, like, it's just the flexibility of being able to, especially in your role, to put stuff out as quickly as possible is definitely like a huge benefit, and not like kind of holding yourself to like, oh, I'll edit this after the period, I'm going to get it out right now. That's the whole point of the LCC and the LSC programs, is to provide things as quickly as possible. So I love the fact that you're really really pushing yourself to get that out there. Apart from the, your flexibility in order to capture and produce stuff and get stuff out, when it came to interviewing for both jobs, the NFL and the NHL one, and just going through that process, obviously, at the time you said it wasn't as competitive as it is now, but what's one particular, if there's like, you can narrow down to one or two things about you as a creative that you think landed you the job, what would they be? Because I feel like people always want to know, like, what was the thing that got you across the finish line and separated you from the other candidates who were applying at the time?
I think right at the top of the list is professionalism, especially now. I think now even more so than when they were searching for people and couldn't fill positions 5 years ago, right? So I think going into the interview with the understanding that it's first and foremost a job, which is a silly thing to say, maybe because it's an interview. But I feel like some people might take the perspective of a fan, because they are a fan, right, of the league or the team that they're interviewing for. So professionalism, number one, and Also, for me, I'm the type of person that always has a camera on me, no matter what I do. So with the NHL in particular, and with going through an interview process, a more formal interview process with the Detroit Red Wings, actually prior to getting the job with the NHL, I really communicated that this is a passion of mine. This and wanting to take that passion to the professional level, and being honestly a hockey nerd, and being able to apply that passion and that knowledge of the game to fans and people that are consuming this content was something that was like really, really exciting for me, because I consumed the Hockey Night in Canada pieces, that were done on these Red Wings teams. I consumed the Stanley Cup videos on VHS growing up. That's how I loved the game. And now there's a whole nother audience who's getting introduced to the NHL and the NFL through social media, and having the opportunity to create and capture moments that can influence someone who will have our job in 20 years is a pretty cool thing to think about.
No, that's all great points across the board, and I love the emphasis on professionalism. Again, it goes back to that standard. And one of the questions I had for you was, what's your mindset every time you're covering the game? And I think in it all, like your mind works at I want to produce at a high level. I want to be a professional at the highest level, and I want to set the standard at the highest level. And I think that's something that a lot of people can definitely learn from, especially when you're younger and you're still figuring it out. Like, just understanding that, again, it all goes back to like, this is a job we have. This isn't just something we do as a hobby or for fun. Moving forward here, I want to talk about obviously the main event that I got to meet you at, and that we got to cover, the Stanley Cup Final back in 2022 between the Lightning and the Avalanche. We worked, I think, 2 or 3 games together. They won in 6, if I'm not mistaken, in Tampa Bay. Obviously, you also don't just shoot Detroit, but you get to travel and you get to work some of the conference finals, and you've also worked the Stanley Cup Final last 2 years. Let's start though with 2022, where we got to meet. Let's just go right into it. Yeah. We got, you and I got to witness Colorado win the cup. We got to be on the ice. I've spoken about my experience at length on my YouTube channel and on other things. What was your memory of getting to do that? Because, and I say this to everyone, like, you got to do what 0.01% of the world has ever gotten to do, is be on the ice for a Stanley Cup championship and the cup lifting and everything. It's something a select number of people only get to do in their lifetime. What was that experience like? What do you remember? Give me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, and I, no joke, got chills just hearing you say that, to illustrate or to explain like what that meant to me. But to start, actually, I have a funny story of when our boss or my boss emailed me about inquiring if I would be available. Somehow, I'm really pretty diligent in my emails. I missed that email for like 10 days, and she had to send another one, a follow-up email asking if I could, and I about fell over because I read this email and could not believe that I didn't respond to it in time. So I had a panic attack in thinking that I missed an opportunity to go and be able to capture this. So that's how it started. Luckily that it all worked out, but being there, I still remember just walking into the building, and one of the things that stood out to me was just how the NHL sets up full offices at in these host arenas. It's not just obviously it's not just another game. It's not a playoff game. It's not a big game. It's the show. It is the finals, and the imagery around the arena of past Stanley Cup champions. It was almost like walking into the Little Caesars Arena for my first day on the job in general. It was just a whole nother level. And I remember having a lot of gratitude for even being considered to have the opportunity, but B, also a little bit nervous to hope that I could deliver. And And then, meeting you was awesome. And, you and I had never worked together before, and you get in a situation where I show up off my flight, and, the players are arriving in a couple hours, and you and I just instantly have to figure out what we're doing. So we're not capturing the same thing. So we're working together. So it's like that instant necessity to sort of like collaborate right away and just jump right into it sort of helped me kind of ease into the fact that, at the end of the day, it's another hockey game that we're capturing.
Yeah, no, it's weird because you say it's another hockey game, but you also started off your point with being like, it's the game. Right. It is at the end of the day, the just another hockey game, but like the stakes are so much higher. You also got to be on the ice for the cup lift. I believe you were on the ice before me. What was it like just being there in front of, Gary Bettman's bringing out the trophy, and then Landeskog goes and lifts it up, and you got a front row seat. What do you remember from that moment? Or did you just black out and just dial in and you're like, I got to get the shot?
Yeah. So if you recall backing up a little bit in games 3 and 4, game 4 was the overtime Kadri goal. And I missed that shot. I didn't get it. And I was sick. I was like,
I remember you came into the room and you're like, oh
yeah. I was like, I could have just died right there. And I was sick to my stomach, and I was getting on a flight, that night or the next morning to go back to Detroit, and Colorado was going to have a chance to win it on home ice. And I was like, wow, like I'm super grateful for this experience, captured some really cool shots, but like I missed that one. And, that might be my experience now. That would be the lasting, that would be the kind of a bad taste in my mouth. And so the next day, my brother and I are watching game 5, and I've never like rooted for a hockey game so hard in my life because I wanted to get the opportunity to capture the game again. And somehow, the Lightning won in game 5, and I got to go back to Tampa for game 6, and kind of same process. And then our boss asked me if I would be comfortable going on the ice after the game, just very casually. I said,
and you're like, what?
I was like, come again? Excuse me?
Yeah, sure, sure.
Yeah, I can do that.
Twist my arm, hold a gun to my head. I'll do it.
So yeah, she hands me my on ice credential, which is framed here in my house from that game.
Yeah, mine is like, I have like a little thing on my door, and I got a frame. I got to figure. You got to tell me how you frame them, because I got mine too.
And I remember going up as the time was winding down to. Remember going up to the door, and they have the security there, and I said, I'm going on the ice after. Here's the credential. And even that guy was like, are you really? Like, is this for real? And so we got that sorted out, and it was one of the most surreal moments of my entire life. As the clock hit 0, you were right behind the net capturing the celebration, and the Zamboni doors opened, and I was literally running onto the ice at the same time that the Avalanche were mauling their goalie in celebration.
Were you worried at all that you were going to slide and fall? You're running onto the ice. It didn't cross your mind?
It was. I feel like this interview is sort of like how how athletes that win the Stanley Cup feel like they just kind of don't remember what happened, right?
Yeah.
And it was kind of like that. I've been walking or skating on ice since I was 4 years old, so that I wasn't really too worried about it, and got down.
You've been preparing for this your whole life. You just did it. You just didn't know it.
And so just being in the middle of all that raw emotion, and watching these moments unfold that are the same moments that I've been watching my entire life unfold, and being behind the camera for that was extremely, extremely powerful. And I remember, getting the shot of the cup, the cup lift, and that I got pretty lucky because you never really know which way they're going to go. And there's 10 people there all lined up, and it's really a gamble. And so I got the shot just before he skated out of frame, and then it's instantly up on the NHL Instagram a couple minutes later, and I continued to capture the cup handoff. And I remember at one point specifically walking over to you, just like eyes wide open, and I was like, I was just speechless. And you're like, keep going, like you gotta keep going, keep
because
going.
In my mind at that moment, I'm like, we can't waste time. We can't we gotta go. We gotta.
And that was after 25 minutes of it, and like the Black Aces had all moved through their cup celebration. The family were just starting to come off, and I was honestly like overwhelmed by that half an hour process of documenting all of the tears, the cup passing.
It's like an hour or two, but it feels like 20 minutes is like gone.
Exactly. So all just going through that process was something I could have never imagined would be a possibility.
Trust me, man. I think about it to this day, like the whole day and the whole I remember the entire game when I was on my end shooting it. It's like Colorado was playing like a defensive masterclass. Tampa was getting nothing. At a certain point, you kind of knew it's happening. Like there's no this year was also the same because Vegas blew out the other team at home. It was like an 7-2 win in the final game. So it's like there came a certain point where in my stomach, this is gonna happen. But like you said, you kind of just black out when they were coming to my end to celebrate. I'm behind the glass. I don't remember capturing that. I just remember seeing it on my laptop after and being like, I don't know where that came from. But it is crazy how you even though you still got dialed in, you came to me and we still had that moment of WTF is happening. But I think something I like to do, and I've done it, I did it that day and I did it last year during the 2023 final. You got to give yourself a moment to appreciate what the fuck is going on.
Yeah.
And I remember going to center ice when everyone was kind of with their families, and I just took a video and I have it, and I'll look, because that was me saying, I got to let myself feel this. Did you have any of that, letting yourself feel what you were, you're capturing history. Did you let that sink in at any point?
Where that really sunk in for me was actually on the plane ride home. And I did take some moments and I got, we got our picture taken on the ice there together. And I actually have a picture that's also framed in my apartment, a little 4x6. Of me on the ice, and Darren Helm is behind me and Elliot Friedman's behind me.
That's so cool.
And I love Hockey Night in Canada, and obviously Darren Helm was on the Red Wings for a long time. So that's one of my prized possessions from that day. But I also one of the things that I was happiest about in that experience was that I had the presence of mind to snap a couple photos during the cup, during the team picture. I was filming the entire time, and I was like, I better snap a couple photos here. And those were actually some of the most lasting moments from everything that I captured. Sure, the videos got a million views and they got shared, but so many of the players ended up sharing a couple photos that I took of everyone piled up, and just having sort of the presence of mind to say, I better take a couple snaps here, was one of the best decisions that I made during that celebration. And then as far as letting it sink in, I was overwhelmed on the plane ride home. I'm not going to lie to you. I was crying my eyes out.
Oh man.
I was like, it just all sort of hit me while I was scrolling through, social media the next day and seeing Gabe Landeskog post that photo, seeing Nathan McKinnon post the photo that I took of them, seeing the video that you edited of all of our content, that we captured,
at 4 a.m.
for that game. Yeah, we were. That's the other thing. I didn't sleep.
I was about to bring it up. Like, you and I, like, after that was happened, the cup was handed, the room celebration, we got back to the hotel, and I remember sitting down with you and getting a beer. And then I get back to my hotel room and I text you. I'm like, yeah, I can't sleep. You want to just edit? Yeah. And I remember I came to your hotel room and we edited from like 2:30 to like 4 in the morning. Like, that was something I'll always remember too, because we weren't even talking. We were just like sitting there and like editing away. And I'm just like, and I think you're just on such an adrenaline high after something like that. And it also just coincides with you the next day feeling emotional about it, because you're riding this high, and then when you come down, it really starts to hit you. Sorry, bit of a brain fart there. I also love the fact that you mentioned the fact that you had the kind of presence and awareness to take photos as well. And that's something I do too. Like, I always have my other camera around and snap a few photos, because at times, like, video is great, but I think people underrate the value of a good photo. Like, I don't know if you can see, like, back here, I have 2 photos from the final.
One that you took there. Yeah, I recognize.
Yeah,
that.
like and then I have like a Stanley Cup one in my living room of I can't remember who's lifting it. Oh, it was Eric Johnson lifting the cup. And it's so interesting because you and I are both naturally videographers by trade. But for me, it's always been the photos that I will look back on and be like, thank God I took that. Yeah. And I don't know what it is about photography, being a videographer, but like, I can't, there's just something about having that still image versus the video. I can go back and watch the video every time. I'll never get the same feeling as looking at a photo. I don't know if you feel the same way.
Yeah, I absolutely do. And getting into videography at the time that I got into videography, they were like, I got into photography because the cameras were capable of it. Right. And I was like, well, I better learn this too. And so that served me extremely, extremely well. And, just professionally in general, being proficient in both. And there's no better example of that than this photo that I took of that Stanley Cup celebration. And one thing that I was super proud of for that one is that it was just like a different look I shot out with my 70-200 lens, and it was just a little bit tighter than the traditional super wide celebration shot, and it was framed so essentially only the players took up the entire frame, and I didn't do that because I planned on it. It was just I had the 70-200 lens on there, and that's what it ended up looking like after 10 frames were snapped, and that's a picture that will stay with me for my entire life.
What was it like the next year, Vegas and Florida? Obviously, Vegas unfortunately won at home. I know you and I were texting.
Actually,
we were texting. I think we texted right before Game 5, and then you're like, "Hey man, like, good luck tonight." Yeah. But I really hope Vegas loses because I want to shoot another one. Yeah. And I'm like, I think I said to you, yeah, I totally get that. Yeah. I don't want to fly anymore.
Yeah. That's the vibe of everybody who works in the league. They're just carted around, and
the travel's hard, and I think it really is. And I had a very different experience than you the last few years because you're obviously just coming from Detroit for those games. I was going coast to coast for on both occasions. But like I said, you got to shoot last year in Florida. You kind of take the Eastern Conference, and then we have Western for the Western Conference. What was last year like? I know you didn't get to shoot the cup lift, but what was the experience of shooting your second final? And did you kind of take anything you learned from 2022 and brought it into 2023?
Yeah, it was just how it worked out. You weren't able to be there. Was it the combine? Something else was.
Yeah, I was at combine for the first few games, so we didn't get to work together.
So for that experience, it was honestly just as good and just as awesome as capturing the cup lift. I was in, it was still an incredible environment. I was sitting next to Lil Wayne. He was in the front row.
That's crazy. I didn't know
one of the games. I got like a fist bump from him, which was hilarious. But anyway, it was extremely similar, but I felt more comfortable because I going in the second time, and understanding that I'd have access to the bench, understanding what kind of shots I wanted to get. I also, learned a lot from Campbell and Matt, who shot the finals, and whose content I watched throughout the playoffs. Is like the first thing I wanted to do was capture a wide arena shot of the Florida fans celebrating their first goal on home
The gimbal
ice.
move, yeah.
Yes, for in the finals. They hadn't been in the finals since '96. So the first goal that they scored in Game 3 was going to be the first goal scored in that arena in the finals in almost 20 years. And so having like the clear direction to want to capture that and having that shot work out. And I think broadcast used it for a little for one of the opening segments, and so creating those different perspectives of this circus of an event is you almost get like a little high off of it and ride a wave to throughout these couple of games. And I actually am part of the reason why I say it was so fun, just as fun as capturing the cup lift, was that Florida won in overtime. And that
was I was watching on TV and I'm like, if they win, I'm leaving. If they win, I'm going. And if I'm not, I'm staying here. Like, I remember that.
Yeah. So the building erupted. And just being in that environment was incredible. There was some rough stuff going on in Game 4 as well. There were fights going on. So it was just the intensity was incredible.
Yeah, it was a different final.
It was very
like
very
the hockey,
different.
like Tampa and Colorado were such like precise offensive teams, super smooth hockey. And then this final was just like, they wanted to kill each other.
Yeah,
it was like crash and bang, like goals at any means. It was a completely different way. And I'm sure you noticed that when you captured it, you're like, oh, this isn't like Kale McCarr skating through a team. This is Matthew Tkachuk trying to kill somebody for the puck. Like it's a completely different like mindset you need to do when it's different teams and different styles of the sport.
Absolutely. And I mean, I remember one of the shots that I captured from the 2022 final was Victor Hedman doing like a coast to coast and then like backhand post-in shot. And then like for the majority of the Florida series, it's like a whack-in rebound goal and
greasy in front of the net,
tip shot from the point. But it was that sort of grit at its highest level, at its highest point of animosity. And you're absolutely right. And there was an extremely large contrast between the styles of play for the two finals, but they were equally gratifying. And I think the biggest difference from me doing the second final was I took a lot more time to soak it all in and understanding that life is short. You never know how many of these opportunities that you're going to get. And so just appreciating the fact that I'm there, I'm standing on the bench next to Darren Pang doing a hit, and while not, being a fan, you can still appreciate where you are, what you're doing, and being a very small part of documenting that history is just an absolute honor.
You mentioned specifically, like, you want to enjoy the experience kind of as a fan, but at the same time, when we work on the sidelines or rink side, there's a very fine line we got to cross between I grew up with the Red Wings, or like, I watched the Stanley Cup Final as a kid. This is incredible. But you also got to temper it a little bit and understand that, like, you're still working. This is a job. Some might even say it's a privilege to be there. How do you enjoy the moment like that, but still keep a level head and remind yourself that this is work and this is career and you got to take it seriously and you can't just be, you got to keep it internalized. Like, there's the right place and the right time. How do you go through that process?
Yeah, I think it's something that you have to learn a little bit over time. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to act like a fan right from day one of the job. As you said, you're in a professional work environment, so you have to be level-headed. But I think you have to internalize your appreciation for where you are, and everyone is might be a different level of fan for the NHL or NFL or whatever league they may be working in. And I think understanding that you are a representative of your employer first and foremost, and that you're not there as just representing yourself. You're not a content creator character, right? You're not there for your personal platform to document it, to show your friends, right? So it's really finding the moments that you can take a picture or just look around and kind of take some mental notes about where you are, and using different outlets to communicate your experience, like you and I talked about for hours after we captured the cup lift, right? So it's finding like maybe the right social time to talk about it with your friends or talk about it with coworkers. But ultimately, we've all seen it across different sports leagues. There's certain moments where people get called out for having reactions on the sidelines, and you have to first and foremost know that you're there to do a job. You're representing your employer, and that professionalism that I talked about earlier. That's really what that means.
The standard.
The standard is the standard. Yeah.
The standard is the standard. Yeah. No, and you're right. And I think that's a really good thing for any young listeners out there who are just coming in this. Like, if you get the opportunity to go to like a Stanley Cup final or a Super Bowl or whatever, like soak it in, enjoy it. But you got to remember that you're there as a professional and you're there for someone else. Unless you're there like on an influencer deal, which is a completely different thing, and not even in our realm of speciality. Like, you're there and you got to keep, there's an etiquette, there's a responsibility you got to follow on these sidelines. And I just think that's a really good point to raise for people who are young and want to get into this. It is fun. It is awesome. It is a cool experience. But first and foremost, you're working. You're at your day job. Right. And it is what it is at the times, but you got to keep a level head and you got to remember why you're there.
Yeah. And I think a really more like tangible example of what we're talking about is when you see someone who is sports royalty at these events, right? And maybe another environment, for instance, like Henrik Lundqvist is one of my all-time favorite goalies. He's walking around at the finals for TNT last year. And I wanted to be like, hey, Hank, you were my favorite goalie.
I love you. Yeah.
Like you're
an icon.
An icon. And but you can't do that. It's not appropriate, right? So it just sort of appreciating that you're there in the first place, and knowing that you're there really to document and to be a fly on the wall, and you're not there to really be included from a social standpoint.
No, yeah, you're there. You're there to, like you said, document, fly on the wall. Like, you don't want to be involved in the situation. You want to capture it as is. I think those are all great points, and I'm actually going to segue to one last thing before we start to wrap up here, because I know you got a game you got to go to here soon. Yeah. You were involved in a certain moment when a puck flew the camera hole and hit you during the play, or was it warm-ups? I can't remember.
No,
but
that was during play. Yeah, my brother likes to.
You got posted on @NHL.
I know. My brother's like, you're the only photographer who the league has actually posted.
Yeah, so, what happened there? What?
So it was the first game of last season. So it was the Red Wings against the Montreal Canadiens. And I got access to a photo hole. So I was kind of switching back between taking photos and shooting video. The Red Wings have their own photographer there. So I'm typically shooting video if I have access to one of those photo holes and working in some photos for the away team. So this was in the first period of the home opener, and was capturing some video. Jake Allen was absolutely standing on his head. He had like 20 saves in the first period. And Larkin came in and had a shot on goal. And I believe it was Jordy Ben at the time who just turned around and full on slap shot, just ripped the puck out of the blue paint. It was sitting in the crease.
Just clearing the puck and then came your way.
Cleared the puck, and I got so lucky that A, I didn't get hit. B, my equipment didn't get hit. I actually still don't really understand how I got out of that without any injury or damage to my camera. But essentially what happened is I think the puck just barely ticked the outside of the camera hole, and I had the tiniest nick on the plastic coating of my 24-70 lens, and that deflected it above my head, and it hit. So at the end of the row where I was shooting, there's a rail, right? And it hit the rail and landed right next to me. And so I all the players were shocked. They skated over, and everyone's kind of looking around, and that was a funny moment. They realized it went through the photo hole, and it was interesting because I got some blowback online when all that stuff got posted. Like, we have to close the photo holes when we're that close. Like, you're supposed to do that when it's within 10 feet of play, and this was sitting in the crease, so I was perfectly fine to have it open. And it was just like, I've shot 200 some NHL games.
Yeah, you know what you're doing.
It's gone through the photo hole twice on.
That's like a needle in a haystack.
Yes,
like that, you could shoot the puck towards that 100 times. I don't care who you have shooting the puck. You won't. Ask Patrick Kane when he plays a game. Hey, Patty, shoot one through the hole. Like, it's gonna take a lot of tries. You have the pucks. Do you have the puck still?
So I got a picture with the puck, and I gave it to a little kid who was sitting right there. But I got the picture with it. I have enough pucks from the game. So the picture, as we were talking about earlier, was the most important thing to me. And when we were sending on our NHL messages, when I was sending it to, I was like, guys, I think I got a crazy video.
I remember we were in the office here, like me and the publisher freaking out, like, oh my God, Troy got it. It was hilarious, and it was an awesome moment.
Yeah. And so then I sent the picture just to like show you guys. I didn't send it to like think it was going to be and then like the Red Wings Sports Center posted it. So that was a funny.
You had your moment in the sunshine and the moment of the limelight.
I'm hoping to avoid that going forward.
You want to. I mean, this is now the second guest I've had on this podcast who has had their something happen with them on the play. You know, Josh from Buffalo Coaster.
Yes.
He caught the ball on the sideline.
That's right.
So you are my second guest who has unfortunately been victim of an errant ball or puck out of play. No, and I just think that's a good moment. And, you know, those are light moments that you're going to tell your kid one day, like, you know, those photo holes there, I got hit by a puck there once. Like, it's just a cool moment.
No doubt.
Anyways, wrapping this all up, I want to talk really quickly about just some quick fire questions here. I do this with every guest, just really quick things that people want to know about this career path and what, you know, cameras, stuff like that, what you want to do.
Yes.
So I'm going to ask you a question. You just give me your response, and you can be as in depth or as quick as you want. All right. All right. We obviously talked about this already, but camera brands: Canon, Nikon, or Sony?
Sony and Fujifilm.
Okay, you have an X100V, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, dude, I love that camera. It's so much fun. It's the best camera. Why Sony over the other ones, if you don't mind me asking?
So, for me, I had Canon prior to converting to Sony about 3 or 4 years ago. And so I have a business partner. We have our own little production company. We do a lot of work outside of sports. And it just made the most sense. It was a bang for your buck thing. It was a look. It was a quality thing. It was a color science thing a little bit as well. I think Canon has this, typically has a little bit of like this magenta thing going on. And we just thought the Sonys looked cleaner, and it was also timing, right? We had these, I had the 5D Mark III for the longest time. That was like what everybody had. That was, 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Now I can say 10 years ago. I'm 32, and I started doing this kind of work when I was 22, just in production in general. So making that switch was sort of like a quality build thing too, right? They're just a little bit sleeker.
Yeah.
So
smaller, lighter. Yeah.
Right. A couple different factors.
Yeah. I love hearing that reasoning. If you could only use one lens for the rest of your career, what would it be?
That's an excellent question. I I want to give a different answer other than a 70 to 200 or a 24
That's
to
kind
70
of
because those
yeah.
are like, that's like probably
It's a given.
That's yeah, because either of those are.
All right, let's change it up. What's the most
Yeah.
underrated lens you've used?
So one of I used it for training camp for the Detroit Red Wings this year, and I loved the look. Was the Sony 135 G Master.
I use that. That's how I got this photo right here using the 135.
So I just like it. I got that lens specifically for training camp because I wanted to kind of. I've been able to document the last 4 training camps for the Red Wings in northern Michigan. But anyway, I wanted to just have a little bit of a different look because I've used my own gear for all of that. So I rented that lens, and it made me concentrate a little bit more on framing because I'm so used to being able to crop for different platforms with each of the 24 to 70 and 70 to 200 lenses. That using that 135 was a really, really fun challenge. I really, really liked it. And I haven't shot any games with it, but I would love to, if I had the opportunity, I would love to just shoot one full game with it.
Yeah, prime lenses are really underrated for shooting sports. I think obviously people get scared. You can't zoom out, you can't zoom in, but it gives a really unique look, and it kind of forces you to challenge yourself as a creative with these limitations. What is the best gear purchase you've ever made?
The best gear purchase I've ever made outside of the A7S3, that's going to be number one, I think. Just for as we talked about earlier, the bang for your buck situation there. I use this like a Tilta cage and handheld just every day. It's so getting away from cameras and lenses, because like I could say any of my cameras are like the best decision that I've ever made because I love them and they're awesome. But from a functionality standpoint, I have this Tilta cage with a handheld wooden handle that sometimes I like better than using a gimbal. I just like the versatility you can get with handheld stuff. So I'll go with that. I'll go with my Tilta cage.
No, I think
wooden handle grip.
That's a great example of like, it's not always the camera and the lenses, but it's also the gear that enhances your experience with those pieces of gear. What's the worst gear purchase you think you've made?
Oh, the worst gear purchase. So this is probably like 7 or 8 years ago. There was actually, hold on, sorry, let me start that over. The worst gear purchase that I've ever made was honestly, it's kind of tough because I've used a lot of the gear that I've purchased daily for a very long time. So that's actually a pretty tough question. Nothing's like coming up. What's up? What's your answer to that question?
Not a, like, I don't know. This is a controversial one. I hate gimbals. Like, I really don't like them. Like,
me too.
It's not my thing. Like, I know like Matt, Faraci, and Campbell, we talked about them earlier. They're awesome with it. I feel so limited by it. I don't use it. It's just sitting on my shelf, like gathering dust, and I only really bring it out if the client needs it. Probably that. I
would agree with you, and I guess the reason why that didn't come up for me right away is because my business partner uses it all the time.
It's the same with my business partner,
right?
Yeah.
So it gets used, but I don't use it at all.
Yeah.
And maybe I just have had like some bad experiences with it. And
you're ready to go. You're ready to shoot a big moment. Players walking out. This happened to me.
And then
I'm like, bruh, like it's just not reliable. But there are people who are really good with it and get good stuff with it. So
it's a time thing, right?
It's a time, and it's like a style thing. I like a handheld look for my stuff. I like documentary style. There's a time and a place for everything. So
yes, agreed. So that I would actually agree with you on the gimbal, just because it's not my it is not my desired
not your bread and butter
tool.
Yeah. What is your biggest pet peeve in sports videography? Or yeah, let's go with videographer. Yes.
It is my biggest pet peeve is I have a couple of them. One of them is people, and you are not included in this, but throwing around the term creator, and there's something in that.
Thank you for making sure I wasn't included in that.
No, you're absolutely not, because you are you are the great. The best example of a true sports videographer, content creator. Mm-hmm. And I feel like a lot of people brand themselves as that, and it's not to your standard.
Okay.
I feel like it's a title that people give themselves without really achieving it.
First of all, I appreciate that, but I'm trying to understand what you mean. You're like, what do you mean, like, in terms of like achieving it? Like, what is it about it that annoys you? I'm just curious.
I think that, at the basis of what we do, we are videographers and we are photographers and we are editors. And there's something about like the term creator that just like rubs me the wrong
like
way.
Making TikToks and YouTubes and shit.
Right. So that like, and I don't honestly know that I can like really justify why I feel that way.
Yeah.
But it's almost like nails on a chalkboard to me when,
it's kind of when people are doing it for clicks and likes.
Exactly. And it's not their job, right? Like I'm a content creator. I just don't, it kind of takes away from the, professionalism that I was talking about
from the art later. Of it all.
Yes. Yeah. So
I agree.
So there's something about that it's almost like when I see it, I know it type of a thing. And it's harder to describe. So that, is, a little bit of it, but,
that's fair.
But honestly, my biggest pet peeve is people who make themselves creators who make themselves a character when they should not.
Yeah. It's like you're there to focus on the team and the athletes, and then you're putting yourself in the middle of it and making yourself
people who shoot for themselves more than they shoot for the job. People who are capturing content to make their own edits when more so than that footage is being applied to the reason that they're there.
That's a great take, and I think it's just knowing your place and knowing that you're not bigger than the brand or team you work with.
Exactly. And I edit my own videos when I have time, and when I like to put stuff out there. But there are specific guidelines in place for all sports leagues for how you can share your content. And so it's just being aware of all of those things, and understanding that you're there first and foremost for a job, not to grow your own personal brand. If your personal brand grows because of the work that you do, I am all for that, especially in the way in which you approach it. I think it's thoughtful. I think it's the right way. I think it's like builds a community around it. And when people, I guess, try to take shortcuts to say, sort of, look where I am and what I'm doing and follow me because I do this stuff. That's what I don't like.
No, I appreciate that. And I think like I'm not tooting my own horn, but like my mentality for this is like, I'm not doing it to gain a following. I'm doing it because I want to help people. Like I wish I had myself and guys on YouTube, like Peter Sorellis and Pete Gottschalk and like all these guys who are actual like content creators and educators. Like I wish I had that when I was starting off. So I want to just, my whole mentality is I want to be the educator I wish I had when I started, just because like, and I've also loved the idea of like creating a community and connecting with other people and highlighting exactly what I'm doing with this podcast. So I really appreciate that. What's the next question? What's the most overdone trend in the sports content space right now?
I guess to me, the most overdone trend in the sports content space. Nothing is coming immediately to mind, but one thing that comes to mind is I feel like there's a lot of teams that ask the players a question, and I feel like some of those questions have kind of gone through the motions now, and so I think some of the questions that are being asked of the players as they do their walkthroughs to practice or to whatever, I think here the Red Wings social team does a really, really good job at A, not overdoing that, and B, coming up with like super relatable, fun questions for the players. But I've seen a lot of teams, not only just in the NHL, put out stuff that's just sort of not that
Yeah,
interesting.
that's fair. It's just, you can only have so much of a good thing, you know?
Yeah.
What is your first camera? What was your first camera?
My first camera. So the first camera that I ever have a couple answers. One of the first video camera that I got creative with was actually like my parents' handheld Sony Zoom handy cam.
Yeah.
So my brother and I used to borrow that camera, and we would make like little home movies and videos with little plot lines. And we would actually take our Sony Walkman CD player, and we wanted to have music over some certain parts, and we would put the headphones up to the microphone on the camera.
That's awesome.
To do little stuff like that. So we're creating, little home videos, like little comedy skits and stuff like that. And this is probably when I was like 12 years old. So that was one of the first cameras I really played with. And then as far as a photography camera, I grew up through the era where there was so many different mediums for storing content. There was like a 5 or 6 year period where every different camera brand had a different type of memory card.
Yep.
That you cannot even access now, right? So it was, I believe it was some sort of a Canon PowerShot model from like the late 2008, 2009, somewhere in there. And I took, it was my dad's camera, and I took it on a study abroad trip to Cuba that I did when I was in college. And that was my first time for an extended period, 6 weeks with a camera. And so I put it through its paces and kind of really like fell in love with photography.
It's always those little cameras like the PowerShot and like that handy cam that gets you in love with it. I love it. Final question here for pretty much the entire podcast. Something I asked everybody: what is one piece of advice that you'd give to a younger photographer, videographer, or a younger version of you who wants to follow in your footsteps and potentially work for, the NHL or the NFL? What's like that top piece of advice you'd give out to them?
My top piece of advice, and I'm glad you asked this because I get that question all the time, is that it's all about relationships. And I have gotten the opportunities that I've gotten because I've taken the time to build relationships with the people in this profession who have given me the opportunities. And I've got more opportunities because of the relationships that I've built. And some of those relationships are built by putting yourself out there. And especially when you're starting, the reason I'm sitting here talking to you is because I love hockey and wanted to document this outdoor ice rink and these kids that I coached, years ago. And I did that. No one told me to do that. I was a self-starter in that sense and did it myself. So putting in work, whether it's with a local club team or a high school team, or shooting whatever there is to shoot that you can document. If you're from a small town, whether it's in the States or Canada, and you want to get into hockey, if there's an outdoor ice rink in your town, like those images are incredible that you can capture from that, and that's like the heart of the game, right? So shooting what you have access to and not being afraid to put yourself in a position for people to say yes or no to you.
Oh, that's awesome. That's a great answer. Wrapping things up, bringing it full circle. Where can the people find you on social media if they want to follow you? Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, whatever you use. Where can the people find Troy Anderson?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at Andy Troyerson. Troy Anderson was taken. So years ago when I made my Instagram account, it's ANDYTROYERSON. Believe it or not, I'm actually not on TikTok. Okay. I'm 32 years old. And work in social media professionally. And so when I'm not working, I have a camera in my hand, but I'm typically in the woods or
Okay.
up north fishing. And
So you can
I like
find
to
this
be in a
guy in the
different
north woods of
environment.
Michigan.
Yeah. So you can find me camping or fishing in my free time. But if you want to check out some hockey and football content, some other photography and video production stuff that I do, you can find me on Instagram.
It's awesome. Last thing, where are you going to be for the next few months? You're obviously about to head to Little Caesars Arena in the next 20 minutes for the game tonight. But what's coming up for you in the next, month, New Year's? What do you have planned for your career, and where can we see you working soon?
Yeah, so gonna continue to shoot for the NHL and NFL this season, and then from a freelance perspective, it's sort of whenever the phone rings. Like I got the opportunity to help film a documentary for University of Michigan football over the spring and summer, and that was sort of at a moment's notice from a call. So the good thing about being in this business is your phone can ring, and then you get into a cool job, and so right now I like to focus on doing the documenting the NHL and NFL during the winter time, and then in the springtime and summer I have a little more availability for other work. So I do a lot of nonprofit organization work here in Detroit. So I have an entire career that's outside of content creation in sports, which is sort of in the video production world for nonprofit organizations and engineering firms and things like that. So, and that's another point I actually want to bring up, because these jobs that I have are a piece of the puzzle. It's not my full-time gig working for the NHL and NFL.
Yeah.
I could not survive if those were my only two jobs.
Yeah.
And
you gotta do stuff outside of it. And I get that.
And that's a huge misconception, I think, that a lot of people getting into this, they think if you're an NFL LCC or if you're an LSC for the NHL, then that's your job. That's your full-time job. It's like, it's really a night and weekend thing. And, it certainly helps with other clients when you can leverage this work to get other jobs and other opportunities. So branching outside of sports is super important as well.
Dropping bombs and gems even at the end of the episode. That's awesome. No, great piece of advice. Thank you again for being on the episode, man. I really appreciate you taking the time. I'm glad we finally got to do it. I don't want to keep you any longer, so I'll let you go off to Little Caesars Arena. You'll probably see some Connor Bedard content from this guy on the Instagram socials really quickly. But Troy, thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. And this is it for episode number 12 of the Sports Creator Showcase. Thank you guys for listening in. Troy, any last words?
No, just want to thank you. The quality of your work speaks for itself, and looking forward to seeing what you create next.
Thanks, man. All right. For everyone listening, everyone watching, thanks for watching. Peace out.